Alright, howdy folks, Farmer Devin here. I figured I'd try to get a video in today. It's been a while since I've even recorded one. A little bit about what we have going on the farm today. It is October, 2nd today. Just got back from work the other day, and since it's October, today I am taking on the project of taking all 4 of these bins, and I'm going to combine them one wheelbarrow at a time into one centralized pile just on the other side of the fence there, and make sure I give them plenty of water, or give that pile plenty of water, and then it's going to age until spring, and that'll be our compost supply for next year. So it's going to be roughly probably about 3-4 cubic yards going into one pile here, and by spring I'm expecting like 2.5-3 to be available. So figured I'd take this cross section before I started digging into everything, just show that it's all kind of settled and compacted into one unit over the course of the last year. Not really seeing any major stratification or differences on the outside, which is about what I would expect at this point, because it's had that landscape fabric up against it and plenty of oxygen, so the outer shell of this whole thing should be pretty much still dry and not really broken down very much. Anyway, when I get done doing that, all of the material that's in the bin and the piles that I've built up over the last year, since last October, will all get flipped into these bins to start the process over again, and that'll give us a compost for all this stuff for 2027. So plenty of time to age, get some good biology going in it. I know at least this bin and the one on the far end have some red wigglers in them that I've seen, so hopefully we have some of that in the main pile as well. And I guess we'll do a little bit of a walkabout of the greywater system in the garden. We haven't had a hard frost yet, so we still have a lot of squash growing. You can see one of them has come through the fence and started to take over the backyard here. So we'll look at that. Some cosmos growing right here. I had a lot of wildflower seed that we threw around this year, and that happens to be one of the ones that germinated for us. So we've got a bubbler in our greywater tank here, keeping that oxygenated and somewhat healthy. Obviously, as we've talked about in previous videos, a lot of stuff that I'd like to do to improve on this next year. When I turn this off, which will be before I go back to work probably here in another week or so, I'll be killing the valve and switching back to septic for all of our water, and I'll be cleaning out the grease trap that's under there, getting all the fat and whatever nasties are in there, along with the charcoal that's in there as the primary filter, and that'll all go towards compost, where it will have a number of years before it gets used anywhere. Greywater system is working pretty good, but I'm not extremely happy with having the wicking bed as the first bed. As the roots developed this year, they kind of clogged that up and it started flooding. So it still drains and flows through there and works its way through the system, but it's not as free-flowing as I'd like, and I do not like the idea of surface water from the greywater system, especially this early on. There's a lot to be desired there. So that bed will be converted to a media bed before next year, so we'll have a media bed ×2 probably. I might just move the orientation or something, but this wicking bed seems to have had no problems. This media bed's still doing its thing. You can see we still have plenty of salt in our water. That's what all this white is all the salts that have kind of percolated up from evaporation. Oh, one of our bees getting a drink there from the biochar. Interesting. So that's what's going on there. You see there's a whole mess of tomatillos and tomatoes, and the squash has pretty much died back. There's been enough of a chill to affect that, though I tend to suspect that it's actually flooding that killed all that. But it's growing. I think the tomatoes that are in that flooded wicking bed are kind of weird. They have almost like a wrinkly texture to them, which is interesting. But see if I end up even eating those, or if they all go to the chickens. So we've got a little bit of squash here. This is from a seed exchange that I did, and the label on it said torpedo squash, but I've had a couple of different expressions come up from that seed, so not what somebody would typically refer to as a genetically pure variety, but fun nonetheless. I really like vigorous squash plants, and I love squash that stores well, so I'll continue to work with that and save seed from it and end up with weird wonky varieties that taste good, and eventually perhaps have something that resembles a landrace variety. Going back into the main garden now, we're going to skip all the stuff that's in the front of the house for the most part, but over yonder you can see a little bit of dill right there, and then behind it in that bucket, rather small, but there is a jalapeno growing there. We might end up moving that into the hoop house or into the house as it gets colder, just to keep it growing, because it's alive and doing pretty well, so if we can keep it going, we might as well. Goji berries, we planted 6 of those this year. Here's 2 of them. These are doing pretty good, and we're actually getting some berries, so get out of the sun there, and they're ripe, come right off, pretty tasty, so I'm happy with that. First year goji berries, those were good. Anyway, main garden, rhubarb still kicking it. We had some rain when I was gone, so mushrooms coming up occasionally. Not exactly sure what variety those are. Haven't really bothered to look. I'm obviously too late for them anyway. More of a wildflowers. I don't know exactly what these are, but I think they're more cosmos. We have got some other random flowers growing here and there. Nice and pretty. I like it. I'm pretty down with having flowers in the garden. That looks to be a carrot right there, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. Lettuce is pretty much all gone to seed, so we collected a little bit of seed from that today. All of our volunteer sunflowers have pretty much been picked clean and are more or less done for the year. We got a little bit of flowering going on still. Rose has harvested some of the potatoes. We've got some more that are still growing, and we'll let those go for a little bit longer. Have more squash that's maturing over here. We've picked some as well. I'll have to maybe take a screenshot or something like that of all of the squash we have on the shelf and add that to this video. But that's our big bed of the torpedo squash there, growing pretty well. Right over in that area of the squash patch, we pulled a monstrous, like, bluish green squash out of there. Kind of elongated. I'm excited to try that. We'll see how that goes. On seed collecting today, I also collected a bunch of pink poppy seeds, so those are cool. Those grew pretty well. And then we have a whole bunch of, like, various pumpkin crosses going on. We've got a green one right there that you can see is not ready yet. You can kind of see the starting to orange in there, or yellow of one, underneath of this big tomatillo that's starting to produce pretty well. Our big tomato plant, you can see, has just turned into a big old sprawling bush. And we've got a little bit starting to ripen down there, but there's a lot of fruit on that, so hopefully get some good production out of that before it gets too cold. I'm talking about maybe putting some sort of sheet over some of this stuff when it gets cold this weekend, just keep it alive for another week or two. Getting a whole lot of native pollinators around here besides our ladies. There's this little bee fly or whatever that is on our marigolds here. And I've noticed quite a few other species kicking around today. I harvested one melon. You can kind of see over yonder. I'll just get a little closer. There is the remnants of one, but the vine pretty much died, so this is just going to go to the chickens later today. Actually, I'll probably just take that with me. So the cantaloupe's pretty much done, but I did save some seed from the one that I got, and it was really about this size. It wasn't very impressive, but I'll take what I can get. We may have a watermelon growing right there, and I'm crossing my fingers for that, hoping we get something. Have some broccoli that's starting to grow pretty well. You can see some basil in the background there. It's growing, getting a little warm, so some of the basil, like this, has already flowered. A little bit of tomatoes planted in there. Some sunflowers that Elizabeth and I planted. So these are more like seed sunflowers. Nice and big. October 2nd. Still growing pretty good. So pretty happy with that. Oh, it appears that perhaps right there in the sunlight, our raspberry may have survived on this bush, which I would be very pleased with if it did. Raspberry seems to be struggling for us, and I think it's probably just the salt in our water. I don't know. We haven't had much luck with strawberry as of yet. Some more sunflowers, growing over here. And a little bit of cabbage that's starting to come up. We'll see if that survives the winter and produces anything for us by the time it gets too cold for that to survive. But it's pretty cold hardy, so we'll give it a go. And more pumpkin here, a whole bunch of it. See that this one's almost ready. Decent sized pumpkins, kind of like jack-o'-lantern sized pumpkins, small jack-o'-lantern pumpkins, a little bit bigger than a pie pumpkin. And we've got a few varieties here. We've got this one that's like kind of like a squished circle, sphere or whatever. That one's kind of nice. We got quite a few of those. I kind of like that shape. I think they store and stack pretty well, so hopefully we get quite a few more of those. And there's a kabocha squash or something of the sort growing right here. That got picked a little too early, but hopefully it ripens okay. And then it looks like there's another one going right there of it. And then this is zucchini, and we've had a few fruit come off of that over the course of the summer. Could always do with a few more, but we'll just see how it continues over what's left of our year here. Again, if we can get this covered this weekend, perhaps we can get another week and a half, 2 weeks out of it, and continue producing until the end of the month here, which would be kind of nice. I don't know, the forecast is mostly pretty warm coming up. It's just got cold snap here too. So I took the scythe today since our mower is still down and cut some tumbleweeds back in a few places, just trying to open things up a little bit since there was some moisture. We've got quite a bit of germination going on of cheatgrass for the most part, and some other native grasses and small forbs and such. That looks like that might be a dandelion right there. So a little bit of greening up, which is nice after being hot and dry and dead over the summer. So this is going to be where our main compost pile sits. Got it more or less scraped out. I do want the soil contact for the microbes and such, and I'll deal with whatever tiny bit of weed seeds end up in the bottom of that. It's mostly something we're doing for biology, so we'll get a layer down, water it, another layer, water it, and make sure it goes into the winter with plenty of moisture. And it's a nice congruent pile. This is the shape of the hoop house currently. You can see that there was a little bit that came apart in the wind, mostly because I was a fool and did not order greenhouse tape, so I had to use duct tape when I was putting this up a couple weeks ago. I have the tape on order now. I'm gonna have to use some duct tape to get this by for the next couple of days while I'm waiting for that to come in, and then I'll have to frame this end wall and put a vent in on that side and get everything kind of ready for winter this week. We've got some chicks. There's the 3 that survived from our original batch, and then about 7 buff Orpingtons and 12 sapphire gems in there. The idea, of course, was to, you know, like get 100 or 200 of production reds, but didn't end up doing that, obviously. We're going to have a ragtag bunch of birds again. Oh well. It'd be nice to have some eggs. And another thing that I got to do while I'm here is get a roosting bar built in here. I'm just going to do like a simple mobile A-frame with some bars across it. Give them something to roost on. I can sit in here. And yeah, that's more or less what is going on with the farm and where we're at. We're at 15 minutes now. I suppose I'll do a quick walk down here and show what's going on with the pasture. So as we're walking down here, you obviously see all the tumbleweed from the route that the septic tank line takes, and then where it discharges here. We've got a lot of garden mallow growing, a little bit of cochilla weed, got some cattails coming up, sunflowers, and we had that daikon radish early in the spring. I harvested some seed from the bee balm that was here. We've got a few other weeds coming and going. This one's got a lot of pollinator activity on it at the moment. Not entirely certain what it is, but it is looking to me like a radish, just from, I know it's a brassica from the flowers, and then the seed pods look really radish-like to me, so might be a late season radish here. Anyhow, coming on down to the pasture where the ducks were this summer. So they started over here where I've moved all the pens back. We had a single pen that moved its way along here. You can kind of see that it's a little more of a vibrant green. Starting about here, we split them into 2 pens and moved them for a couple weeks, and then while it was here, I think they ended right about here where it starts to get really vibrant green. And all of this area going back, I used the screen here to distribute just a small amount of compost on the surface of the soil behind them. And I think that's probably the right move. I mean, I am seeing stuff green up again back here. It greened up a little more in the spring before I left that week. And what I am seeing as far as species is more blue grama and some ryegrass and other native species and productive species that are growing here. A little bit of tumbleweed and stuff, but not a whole lot of weeds. I'm seeing what I think is a really temporary brassica come up as a seedling, and I'm fine with that. That'll pump some sugars into the soil for a week or 2, and then it'll die back. Going this way, I think we've got a pretty significant crop of cheatgrass coming in here. I'm not really certain, but just judging by the wispiness and bright green nature of a lot of this grass, that's my guess, is that's all cheatgrass. So certainly better than bare soil. I'll take it. You know, it's all photosynthesizing and doing its job, so mostly happy with it, though I wish I had something a little more productive going on species-wise. You can see heading down the pasture that there's quite a bit of green where the ducks used to be, and we'll just keep walking it. Since this video is mostly for me to watch later anyhow, might as well document some things. I was out here the other day and taking some pictures of things. One thing that I did see is that we had quite a few of these little brown mushrooms that seem to have popped up while I was gone, and obviously they're desiccated now, but it shows me that there is, one, a decent rainfall event obviously between the greening up and the presence of the mushrooms, and then 2, that shows me that there is some fungal life in the soil, and likely mycorrhizal would be my guess, just based on the fact that it's out here in the pasture. There's not a whole lot of material for saprophytic fungi to digest, and the type of mushroom it is, I think, is just intuitively, I think it's like more of a dry species, so something that does well out in dry places like this. So looking at this, this particular spot seems to have a little more, I'd say, diversity of species. So feeling the grass here, I can tell that there's probably a little bit of rye and some blue grama in here. And I'm not seeing a ton of cheatgrass, but right there is probably some. And then we've got some broadleafs coming up in the understory here. A little bit of our native poppy coming up right there. So this would be a rye right over here. So a little more diversity right here, not all cheatgrass, which is good. I like to see some difference in species. There is a break somewhere in here. I think it's like right here in front of me. I don't know if you can see it with the camera, but to the naked eye it is more vibrant green here. And this is about where I began spreading the diluted blood after slaughter. So from here, I do see quite a bit more lushness. Now this may be cheatgrass, but I'm seeing a lot broader of a leaf structure on there, and a nice dark green, which is a sign of a healthy plant to me. And some different species. This is looks like a bulbous bluegrass to me, sitting right here, and definitely some good green color on the ground here. So I'm liking what it looks like where I spread the blood. You see spots like this. This is where some soaked feed got dumped, basically, from the looks of it. There's a little grasshopper there, and that tends to just cake up, and then it covers the ground almost like a manure patty. And then if you look underneath of it, you can see that there's some soil formation happening where there's aggregation underneath. So good thing long term, even though it looks like just a bare spot, that will develop into some soil over time. And you can see there's kind of this pattern where the ducks had water and really worked it hard. You know, there's not a whole lot growing, but it does leave a depression in the ground so that with future rainfall events, there's a spot for water to congregate and soak in, looking for all those micro undulations in the ground that reduce erosion by giving water a place to collect, as well as seeds and silt. So this little area, this is the reason I just had to walk all the way down here. This was like the second to last day for one of our pens, and it was a spot where the clay essentially rises to the soil surface, and it was just exposed clay. There's nothing growing in it when we put the ducks here. So we put them here for a day. You can kind of tell just from the shape of everything and how flat it all is, and some of this matted down grass. It got really wet, and it was really just like a mud bath in here, but they reshaped the shape of it a little bit. There's a lot more depressions and those undulations we were talking about, and places for water to soak in, and that is benefiting some individual plants, but it's still just bare soil, so it's not like explosive immediate growth after having them on here. However, it is giving a place for life to kind of grab hold, and I think over time this spot will probably heal again. So anyway, that is more or less about all that I noticed and looked at on my first day back yesterday when I came back, and that's enough to show for a video. I better get back over and check on the sleeping baby. We will talk to you later. Bye.